There's another anchor in Reading on the other end of town. When Charlie Harrow opened a restaurant on South Main Street in the late 1930s, he never realized how popular his wife's chicken pie would be. The Harrows eventually retired to New Hampshire. His wife died several years ago. But we caught up with Charlie along the southern coast of Maine, where he was spending his weekends square dancing.
In the 1930s, I was supplying chickens to restaurants. That was my business, wholesaling chickens to restaurants and stores and whatever. And I had a chance to buy this place on the road. It was just a small building, and they sold donuts. So I had sold the idea to the owner to sell chickens, fried chickens. And he picked it up and was quite successful. So I took it over, and he gave me free rent. I remember that time. He gave me free rent until the following spring. Then it was $50 a month. Well, the war started, and it was pretty difficult to get food and equipment and it was hard on labor. I never went to war because I had a farm. We raised chickens on the farm. That was supplying, the chickens were supplying my restaurant. Farm was in Wakefield, but just over the Bear Hill area, just over in the back. Today, that place is a big, expensive development. I've gone by there and I can't even remember where it was now. Walter Astor, he and I, we practically ran the business there for several years until I had this offer to go away, and then I decided to get out of it. Walter Astor took it over, and I still held all the property. And eventually he got so successful he bought the whole property from me. I guess that was about 10 years later. And today he's his son, Wally. He came in, he worked for him as a teenager. And today Wally runs it. He's been very successful.
My father came to work here in the 1940s. He was a young man in his teens, and he came to work for Mr. Harrow. He worked here all through his teens and into his 20s, and by the 1950s, when Mr. Harrow wanted to retire, my father took the business over. So our family's owned Harrow since 1956. We all came to work here, Dan and I, as we got older. We all worked with my father through the 50s and 60s into the 70s. In the 1970s, we added on the new building, which now is 26, 27 years old. And we put a new kitchen in and we enlarged it. So in 1979, we essentially doubled our size.
Harrow's Rustic Roost. That was Mother and I. We were the ones that started it.
In the 90s, we closed the full-service dining room, focused just on the chicken pies. And then we also at that time started to share our outside space with the Calaresos next door. The one thing that's remained the same over the last 60-plus years has been the chicken pie, which is Mr. and Mrs. Harrow's original recipe.
But the chicken pies took off. And they began to be a real part of the restaurant because the takeout business is just beginning to come in at that time. And Mr. Calareso, he came in the picture. I operated the corner store there. We had a fruit and vegetable stand, and we operated it every summer. Well, he was in the business in a wholesale way in the Boston market. So he came to me one day and he said, I'd like to take over. And I said, gee, this is a good chance, get a good rent out of it, and it'll leave me all the headaches that go with it. So he took it over. And from that beginning, his sons all worked into it. You see what it is today. It's huge.
When I was young, a little boy, my dad had a good relationship with Charlie Harrow. We were renting the property from him, and at one point we bought the property from him. And Charlie always felt as though he was part of the business, almost like he was in a partnership with my father. And when I was a little boy, I remember him coming down and visiting and seeing how we were doing. And you know, we'd get bigger and we'd do more with plants, and Charlie was just always amazed and just so supportive of what we were doing here. He was a great guy. I haven't seen him in a long time, but as a boy, I just remember him being such a nice guy, just so supportive of us and my dad and our business and my grandfather. Yeah, it was great.
Calareso's has been next door to us, neighbor, since the 1950s. In the 90s, when we closed down the dining room, we started to share some of our outside space with Calareso's. We're still inside, but in their season, especially summertime, you see a lot of flowers out front, and that's for Calareso's.
Over the last few years, we've really been working with the Arsenals, with Wally and Danny, and in cooperation with them, we've really been able to grow our business, and they've grown their business quite a bit, and it's just been a tremendous relationship. There are two family-run businesses that have been in Reading for a long, long time. Harrow's has a great reputation. Everybody knows Harrow's chicken pies. Everybody loves them, and it's been great having this business relationship with them.
What happens is a lot of times he's busy, I pick up some of his customers buying a pie on the way out, and when I'm busy, people go over and pick up salads or whatever next door, and we both benefit from having each other on the lot. So we've actually put a walkway in our front, from our front door to his front door, to make it easy to shop at both stores. It's a good mix on the lot, we think.
So many times I see customers coming to our store, coming to their store, talking about Harrow's and how much they like it. And, we've been able to utilize this outside space and a lot of their parking to help our business grow. Our garden center business has grown tremendously in the past 10 years. So it's been a great relationship.
And I remember Sailor Tom, he used to come in and say, "Hey, Harrow," he says, "how's things going?" I said, "Same with you." He'd drive by to see how many cars I had in front of my place, and I'd do the same thing to him. He was a character. I liked old Tom. Then his wife ran the business up there for a while, and I used to do business with her. She was a nice lady. Wes Pocket, yes, I remember him. We'd run out of clams or something, and I'd call Wes up, and they'd say, "Hey, if you got a gallon, are you gonna let me have?" and that sort of thing. And he'd do the same thing with me. So he sold fried clams, fish, and to takeout. People would come down in the summertime especially. Everybody would buy their clams and French fries and be out chomping on them in their cars. So it was pretty good. And the wintertime was dead as a doornail.
Charlie took up square dancing after his wife passed away. He says it not only gives him exercise, but also keeps his mind alert as he follows the commands of the square dance car. As we finished filming him during a square dance at the Alfred, Maine Town Hall, another square dancer asked us where we were from. We told him we had come up from Reading to film Charlie Harrow. The gentleman said he wanted to meet Mr. Harrow, so we got the two of them together.
I'll bet you can't place me. I worked for you in 1947, 48, 49, downstairs, making brisket, cutting up chickens.
Oh, good Lord, that's a
Al
long time
Quant,
ago.
Quandt. I was still in high school. And I worked for you.
You were in high school.
I was in high school.
Yeah,
I got out of high school and pedaled down there. The young lady told me that you were here, and I couldn't believe it. I often wondered. I've been down to your place and had the pies since you sold it. While I was going to school, it was just an extra job. I'd drive up there. I think it was 6 miles by bicycle. But in those days, as long as you got there, you got paid. You didn't get paid sitting at home. Well, it was a great guy to work for. When we get our break, you could come upstairs and go to the soda fountain, just inside the swinging doors, going outside.
Yep, I remember.
Anything you wanted to make, you could make it, but you had to eat it. And if you got sick, you didn't get paid. You remember?
I remember that.
You and your wife, you were great people to work for. You really were. That's a long, that's 60 years ago.
God, is it that long?
Well, 58 or 59. What's a year at our age, right?
It doesn't make any difference. Here.
It's great that you're doing so good. You must have been eating some of them pies. And I'm surprised to be way up here, over 100 miles away, and meet him again.
When asked how old he is, Charlie's standard answer is 78. But friends tell us he's been saying that for many years. As Charlie puts it, age is only a matter of the mind.
Waltz away, rapidly